14th, 6 p.m. Tonight's meeting is a continuation of the Charter and Bylaw Review Committee. It is an open meeting. It's on Zoom. It is being recorded. I thank all of you for coming this evening. If you'd like to speak to the board, we please prefer that when you do stand up, state your name and your address, and you'll have the floor. And you'll speak through the chair to the committee. I'd really appreciate that very much. How this is going to go is I'm going to take attendance first. Then we're going to go through and accept the meeting minutes that have been posted on our website. Then the agenda will be to discuss any open items the committee felt were unfinished and get their feedback and their input. If you could please silence your phones, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you. I'll do the same. And then we'll ask for citizens input. You're all here. Maybe you were at the town meeting, or maybe all of you were at the town meeting. You heard the pros and cons for moving forward. That's why we're here, because we're hopefully get this completed by November's town meeting. Then at the citizens input, I'm going to we'll sit down and between the committee establish a meeting schedule so that we can set up a meeting time so we can complete the charter and present it in November. So first we'd like to take attendance. We have Joe Calamati via Zoom. Larry Sedell, Bill O'Connell, here. Jen Altamonte, here. Kelly Bolton Grant, myself, Don Martinez. So who's not here at the moment is Mr. Salisbury, Brian Salisbury, Sue Garton, and Joyce Flannery. So I'm just gonna open this up to the queue before we get started. Joyce has been at 1 or 2 meetings. I've emailed her a few times. She's not responded at all. So I'm not sure, she's on the committee. There's no reason for not having her, but she's never been here. And I'm not sure, maybe you know her well. I don't know her well enough. Maybe someone could find out, if she plans on, because she certainly hasn't responded to any emails.
She's not even responding to emails.
She's not even responding to emails, Mr. O'Connell. Okay. Not at all. Not one bit. So unfortunately, we don't have any input from her, and she's on the committee. She was at the first couple of meetings back in 2021. After that, we've not seen her. So first order of business again, and one thing I did forget to the audience, we have received some input from the town, from some of the residents. And Mr. Bill Bissonette has sent me an email, and he would like to read, he would ask us to read, he's not able to come tonight, he would like us to read his email into the minutes, which we'll do. Sue Garton also, she's on the committee, but she's not able to attend. She's asked us to also read her email into the minutes, and she plans on being here at subsequent meetings. And then I met with Mr. Ranieri, and I know that he met with several other members of the board. And out of respect to him, he's not able to make it tonight. He apologizes for that. But we went through a number of things, and I did tell him that I would raise, the items that he raised with me to the town. And I'm sure there'll be at subsequent meetings, and depending on how long this continues, everyone will have the opportunity to have to provide their input. So we have 14 meeting minutes that were created either by Mr. Spizzato or Mr. Frame and Mrs. Grant. And at this time, they've been posted on the website. I'd ask the board to review those minutes, and I would like to have a motion to accept those meeting minutes as presented. What we're missing is our meeting minutes for 123, and we now have 510, but we haven't had an opportunity to hand them to present them to the board. So I'm not asking for an approval of the May 10th, 2023 meetings, or until we can find 123. So I don't know what happened, but at that time, Mr. Frame was taking the minutes, and he was working with them. As you all know, Mr. Frame unexpectedly went out. We've scoured. That has full access to his system. We've scoured and looked through notes. He typically wrote notes. Then he would type them up, and then we'd post them. We can't find 123.23. So we're at a loss for those minutes. We'll continue to look for those minutes, but it's just an unfortunate situation. So we can go back and look at our notes and try to collect them from memory, but I haven't asked the board members to do that as of yet. We're still looking for those minutes, okay? And Beth, who is the, temporary town administrator, has been looking for them and will continue to see if we can turn over every nook and cranny. So that being said, I would open it up for a motion to accept the previous meeting minutes as presented. Those would be 3/8, the first meeting, which was March 8th, 2021, April 12th, 2021, June 14th, 2021, July 12th, 2021, 8/9, 2021, November 8th, 2021, January 10th, 2022, February 7th, 2022, March 22, 5 May 9th, 22, June 6th, 2022, July 11th, 2022, September 27th, 2022, November 21st, 2022. Those are the minutes that we all have. We do have them for 5/10, but since the board hasn't had a chance to read them, I'm not asking for a motion to accept them. We have a motion. We have a first. We have a second. No second?
Second.
Second, thank you, Joe. Oh, I see Mr. Salisbury is here. All right, so all in favor, say aye.
I'd like some discussion.
Okay.
There were some
Aye.
minutes I was not present at, so I could not vote on meetings. That was- Also philosophically, when were these minutes written?
When were they written?
I have a hard time remembering things we did going back 2 years. To be rather frank.
Dennis wrote these minutes after the meeting. So the first minutes were written by Mr. Spizzato.
We wrote them at the same
They
time.
wrote them at the same time. So they
Okay,
were written at the same time. I can't answer because, I didn't write them, but I know Dennis wrote them right after. And I know Mr. Spizzato did as well.
It wasn't right after.
Yeah.
it wasn't right after.
Was it?
How late after was it?
Well, some of the 2021 ones were not written until 2022. So,
I'm sorry, philosophically, I have a problem.
so, and they're
May I
dated.
ask a question? So then what would you do about that going forward? So then what's the answer to,
Going forward.
well, what's the answer to the problem of the minutes then? How do we,
Who's doing them now?
I am doing them now and I did them for the 10th.
For Maytown?
Yes, which is the ones that.
They're not posted yet. So you're
Correct,
doing
because
them
we
now.
haven't seen them yet,
So was there a reason why you didn't do them before?
because Dennis was doing them before.
That a secretary, that's not your role.
All right, this isn't meant to be contentious.
I'm not being, I'm just asking the question.
No, I wasn't asked, so
But I just thought that was
It
your role.
wasn't-
I was waiting for something from you, I guess.
okay, that's fair enough. So going forward, this is,
Then I would expect you to obviously post them and then we would approve them at the next meeting. Is that fair?
so the secretary typically does not post. It would be the clerk of a committee, like we have Hillary, or
Is that who we
Someone else?
would expect that to
They
be?
don't have-
we don't
So-
have a clerk.
So who would that be?
We can certainly figure that out.
So.
So going forward, we would expect the minutes to come from you, the daughter clerk.
Yep.
And then the.
We don't have a clerk, so that's the,
So Dennis was doing this with Hillary. So Dennis, the process was Dennis was writing up the minutes. And then he was providing them to Hillary. And then they would be posted by Jen. So what we'll do is we'll do the same thing. We'll have Hillary take the minutes after they're written. We'll have her make sure they're written up. We'll have them approved and then we'll have them posted. Okay, so it'll be Hillary.
I just, you mentioned a couple of dates here that, for which I did not find minutes online.
I couldn't find September.
I printed them all out.
Is it a while?
I
Okay,
did,
it's
yeah.
good, but if you-
They were all there. What wasn't there was 123, and 510, I went through them every single line by line, and they were all there. I wouldn't put them on this if they weren't there.
may I make a suggestion then, since clearly this is
We'll wait.
I was just going to say, then maybe we table this discussion
Sure.
of the minutes until the next meeting, so then maybe we can send out all the meetings, the minutes in its entirety, if everyone is comfortable with that, and then discuss and vote on them, or who can vote on what meeting minutes.
Yeah, I mean, if
At
you're
the
not
next
here, you
meeting.
can't vote.
And I can go through them all and send each person just the minutes that they can vote on, unless everyone wants all of them, and we can figure out who can vote on which ones.
Just that you're voting on them is a lot, is probably not my suggestion. I would think meeting by meeting.
We can go through meeting by meeting, that's
I mean,
fine.
I think that,
was
that
trying
would
for
eliminate the not being
expediency.
here would be.
It was meant for expediency.
I appreciate
More
that.
than anything else, it wasn't trying to do anything that was underhanded or anything along those lines. The minutes were there, it was for expediency, we can move on, fair enough. So the other item, is so we're gonna table that to the next item, but what we will do is that we'll go through the minutes. And I would appreciate if we'll get you copies of all the minutes, so we'll send a packet to all of you, so you have all the minutes, and then maybe you can tell us which ones you were there or weren't, and abstain from those minutes, and we'll go through, instead of collectively doing this as a group, we'll approve them or look for motion for each set of minutes.
But how about the fact that, Larry, you feel we made in some of these minutes, are you late?
They were late. I mean, I can go and check the dates because.
Is that a concern to anyone other than me?
It is a concern,
Well,
but
so this comes back to my question, what do we do then?
I don't know.
That's why I'm asking the town clerk what we do about
I don't have an answer.
that. I mean, we're working off a live document, which is why the agendas were,
well,
And that's the
Working on-
thing, we did, and I'll just say to Kelly, the whole process was we were going through a live document. Everybody had a copy of a live document, so a lot of the changes were annotated in the column. Town council did that. But procedurally, there was nothing there. Nothing wrong with how we were going through the process. Okay, so that's what we did. And I'm not gonna say that's what was done before, 'cause it doesn't matter what was done before, right? So that's how it was handled. And then the minutes were written out. Now, Larry, weren't the secretary, but you did write a number of the minutes,
because
some of the
they
minutes.
were missing. And
Huh?
Dennis asked me if I would help them.
So again, this is before Dennis went out.
Yeah.
We asked
Oh, yeah,
Dennis
way
for the
before.
minutes, way before he went out, right? So we asked him to pull all the minutes together a while ago because it's something we had to do.
Well, I mean, I know it's gonna take time, but if maybe everybody went through the minutes to see what they require. Or maybe we could double check on a couple of things. I don't
The
know.
one thing that we can agree on, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is that none of these minutes, except for 510, were created outside of Dennis doing them. Dennis did the minutes. And you and Dennis did the minutes. So unless there's a reason here for distrust of Dennis or you, Larry,
Well, it's not a matter of just.
accuracy. Again, I'll use the word accuracy. Never seen that to be a complaint from the town administrator for 30 years about accuracy. So I think we have to have a little benefit of the doubt that what he reported was accurate to the meeting.
If that's what I'm saying, if people review them,
Well,
and if there's something that.
Well, that's why I asked,
Yeah,
that's why I sent them out 2 weeks ago
approve each one.
and asked them to review them. Yeah. And that's why I did that. Okay, so moving on. So the next item, obviously, we took a vote on the 10th of May. And with a vote of 7-1, after going through the red lines, everyone, and we had the Lauren Goldberg here, we went through the changes, we discussed the changes. We had a vote of 7-1 to move to town meeting to approve them. So between that point and town meeting, there was a change of heart for some of you. All right, and I'm just asking if you could, if you want to explain yourself, what problems you had with the town charter that you would approve to present to town meeting. Now, again, we understand the town approves the charter. We recommend it. So they approve it. So the bottom line is what part of the charter, and as part of my email to ask to be prepared, what part of the charter from the committee were you not happy with at town meeting?
I'll speak first. The May 10th meeting.
Yeah.
We were given documentation 2 hours ahead of time.
Okay.
All right, I didn't think that was appropriate. I mentioned that, and I spoke to Jim Cupper, and Jim thought that should have been brought up to town on the floor and not in the town meeting. And I was sort of poo-pooed about that, and he's not agreed.
Okay.
I also mentioned that I think we needed more public input. I mentioned the fact that when we had meetings or items coming in front of the town meeting, in front of the planning board, we get public hearings. And I mentioned that, and I was told that I should have known the rules when I joined. And that wasn't appropriate. I still think we need to have public input. It just shouldn't be the meeting here. It should be provided to the public so they can see what we've done. So that was the gist of my concerns on the 10th of May.
Okay. Mr. Sposato?
So, one of the things was I really moved it to move to town meeting because I thought that was the way that we could get.
Louder, please.
So that was the way that we could get the thing settled, because we weren't gonna get it settled here. So I thought that we went to town meeting, and if it was passed, it was passed. I didn't believe it was gonna be passed, because I knew there were substantial changes in here that people were gonna see for the first time. We had a series of events that caused us not to have this document available until the afternoon of the day before the meeting. So when I saw it, I said, well, there are changes. I don't think people are gonna wanna just vote on this document. They will see the changes, and that's how it panned out. But one of the things that I was, and I mentioned this probably to most of you before, is that I was upset about was that the change in the Board of Health from a 3 to a 5-member board was not in there. And, you know, I was told that, well, that can be done at any time, but I also know that historically there's a reluctance to make changes to the charter outside of the charter review.
That's fair. So Larry, you said significant changes. Can you, other than us not getting the change from 3 to 5 in the charter, which we didn't, and we had talked about it, but we never finished the conversation. So agreed, not disagreeing with you there. What other use
Well,
is significant? What's significant?
When I say significant, I'm
Yeah.
talking about in volume. When you look at this document, there's a lot there that, and people need to digest it. And, you know, and having it available just the day before, I don't believe was enough time.
You mean for the committee?
Not just for the committee, for the.
For the residents?
town At large. And if you recall, I suggested that we have the red line version there at the May 10th meeting, because we did have it for the bylaws. And I think that the changes here are more substantive than the bylaw changes. And the other thing is that there was the last minute change with the acting town administrator that I don't think anybody really had a chance to digest, but that's my opinion.
All right, and that's fine. Now we have enough time.
Yeah,
There was
exactly.
plenty of time to go through this process, right? So the town, you know, there are folks that felt like you, there was a town meeting. The town voted, so we're here. Now we have an opportunity to go through those changes. So there, when you say significant, it's the volume of changes. It wasn't a specific change, other than the fact that, and I'm saying that's why I understand it,
Yeah.
that you're in favor of changing the Board of Health membership from 3 to 5. And then we did talk about that, but we never finished the conversation. So you'd like to pick that conversation back up.
I would like to pick it back
Okay.
up, but I
So that's fine.
don't think that conversation ended any differently than any others.
May I make a
Yeah,
suggestion?
go ahead. You never voted on that.
First,
Yeah,
No, I'm-
Kelly.
Go ahead.
Sit first.
I was just going to think, does it make sense to ask the members of the Board of Health to come in for one of our meetings and discuss that?
Well, we did have it once, but we didn't have it with the full committee.
So would that make sense to open that discussion back up by inviting them to come to a specific meeting and then asking as many members as we have to attend as well?
All right.
I'm sorry, Mr. O'Connell.
my next comments may not go over very well, but it's philosophical. We were members of the committee, and we were citizens at the town meeting, and we expressed our opinion. There were other people, obviously because it passed, that also expressed their opinion. And it feels like the three of us are here having to justify what we thought was in the betterment of the town. Simple explanation. Why did we explain why we suggested a change? We suggested changes. I don't know why we have to sit here and defend our changes when we wanted to make changes.
I'm asking you what those changes are, Mr. O'Connell. So I don't take that comment any other way. The fact that if you had an objection, so you voted on the 10th.
Oh, the word tap, word line is against the line.
Mr. O'Connell, from the 10th, the board meeting, you changed, that's fine. I have no problem with that. I'm not asking you to justify, I'm asking you so we can move forward as a committee. What are the problems so we can surface the issues and discuss them? That's what I'm asking you to do. I'm not asking you to justify.
Yes, you are.
No,
There's no
I'm not.
difference between asking why we made the changes and for us to justify it. You're just talking semantics.
Well, I think some residents might want to hear why
Yeah,
our opinions would be for certain things that we would want in the charter or
Okay,
changed in the charter.
that's just my opinion. I feel like we have to sit here
no, I'm
and
not.
defend ourselves.
I simply asked the question, when Larry used the word significant, was it a change? He clarified, it was the blank. Okay, there was a lot of changes. That's fine. And again, the town spoke, so now we're having a conversation and members of the town are coming here. And they're gonna have an opportunity to speak their opinion. And we're gonna listen to them, just like as I sat down with Mr. Ranieri twice, you sat down with him, Mrs. Altamonte sat with Larry, everyone pretty much has sat down with Mr. Ranieri to hear what he's had to say,
Mhm.
right? So,
Absolutely.
and I have that.
Good.
And any one of the citizens here in this town that are here are free to have that conversation.
Of course,
Every single one of the meetings, and there's quite a few of them, were open to the public.
correct.
It wasn't until the last meeting. So fine, the last meeting, they wanted to move and I thought we were ready to go. So we're here. We're gonna work through it. So at this time, all I want to do is, there are 2 emails. I'd like to read them into the minutes. I don't know if you didn't receive them. They were sent to me, but I want to read them into the minutes. So because we're now at the point where there's citizens input. So we have your feedback. This is Altamonte. Do you have any feedback?
I just am curious, if you were ready in January,
Yeah.
what transpired on May 10th to call a meeting about the narrative that you sent to us calling for the meeting on the 10th?
I'll explain myself. So, and I thought I did that night. We were all set. It really wasn't, the charter was good to go. But then we had a situation where Dennis went out suddenly and the select board, at the make of the select board at the time, had to make a decision. That decision, what happened at that point, and I was the chair at the time. It was, everyone said, hey, this is a first, it's, what do we do? What's the right thing to do? So I called AP Law, our town council, to get their advice. We met, the select board met, had an emergency meeting. We called them first, how do we go about it? We need to post it. We did all the procedures the right way. We got their advice and they said at that point in time, hey, we have the right, and they checked with Mass General Law and the Attorney General's office. They said you have the right, okay, to name a temporary town administrator, which we did, which is with Beth, Mrs. Cornell Smith, sorry, which was her. And we did that for one reason only, the continuation of government. That's why. There was no further discussion about a replacement or anything. At that time, I think you all know here, none of us knew what was going on with Dennis. None of us knew. So we were in really uncharted waters and doing the best we could based upon the information that we had. It was very, very tricky. But what we did know is that he wasn't going to be able to perform the duties of a town administrator. So the board met, we had a discussion, we named Beth. At that point, then things, noise, all kinds of stuff were going on. Okay, now, all right, charter is up on town meetings. So we start talking about the warrants in the town meeting. Hey, what's going to go on in the charter? So we go back and we look, because one of the things that we did that night was pull a charter out to see what is the procedure? What's the process? Because we didn't want there to be any problems or have any citizen object to naming you as our town administrator or Mr. Spizzato as our town administrator. We wanted to do the right thing. So we did the right thing. But it was obvious in the charter that there was no provision in the charter for something like that to happen. The only provision that was in the charter at the time was that if the town administrator was going to take a leave of absence and he knew ahead of time, or she knew ahead of time, then they would give notice to the select board, and that town administrator could name that person, and it had to be a 10 business day appointment. Again, knowing in advance. Mr. Frame did not know in advance. We all know that. We can all agree to that. He didn't know in advance. So what do? So all we did on that line was add that the select board would have the ability to make that temporary assignment without having to go and look at Mass General Law, without having to call town council. And the reason why that was recommended and discussed with town council was 10, 15 years down the road. What happens if the makeup of the select board is very different? And now it clearly defines, okay, what they can do and what they can't do. And that's all we did. That's all we did that was new. And and I sent that language all to you, and we talked about it that night, the 10th. That's the only thing that we added to that piece. And then we clarified the powers and duties of a temporary, which we basically just minimized. Because at that point, the temporary, they don't have the same powers and duties that a town administrator has, right? Anything that Mrs. Smith would do, she'd have to run by the select board. We wanted to make sure that was in there too. So we were protecting the town. That's all we did. That's the only change. The other thing that didn't get in there was 3 to 5. If you look at the language, here was the original language. And then here's the 2 sentences that we were adding afterwards. The difficulty, and I will admit to this, is the way it was presented. Because they struck off the paragraph, they added the paragraph. All they did was they took that paragraph, copied, pasted, and added a line at the end of the paragraph. And that was in the email that I sent to all of you saying, here's really what changed. It wasn't material. It was to protect best interest of the town. And I'm happy to read what was added.
I just don't think 2 hours prior to.
I don't disagree with you.
I'm just saying, you're asking why I did what I did. If that subject matter was as weighty as that was, 2 hours before us talking about it and only allowing ourselves about half an hour, 45 minutes to talk about it, wasn't enough for me to say, I'm ready to go forward.
And I'm okay with that.
That's
I
my
understand,
feedback.
all right, and that's fair. I mean, that's fair feedback, and I appreciate that. And there was nothing, we weren't trying to do anything.
No one's saying that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
Well, it's just, and I didn't say you, didn't say you, not at all.
talking about something that.
I
So it's
understand.
the time,
Yeah.
it's the timeless of the information, it's the subject matter. And it's so close to going to town meeting,
Yeah.
that's why I voted the way that I did.
And in hindsight, and again, I'm not asking just by, what I really want to know is, and I should have worded this way, what I want to understand is, do you have any issue with any of the content other than the items we added? Do you have issue with any of the content that we had free? Because what we voted on was everything except that addition.
I think once I started to dissect it, and I really, and I'll be very transparent, I'm embarrassed to allow what has happened to go on as long as it has. To not take a role every meeting, to not vote on minutes every meeting, to not have an agenda every meeting, to talk about it, and I'm not an expert in MGL. Half the people I think in this room are not experts in Mass General Law. I want to understand it as a townsperson. I want to understand what you're telling me, what's going to happen.
Mhm.
I took what was said to me as gospel, and I shouldn't have. And I'll be very transparent in saying that. I don't know what some of these outcomes are going to turn into be, what they actually translates into actions. And that makes me nervous.
So
But when I started to go back and I started to read some of these things, I don't feel comfortable. And I'm curious to know what some of the feedback from our guests have and some of the other members has for their comments.
So, all right, let me just make sure I understand. So you don't feel comfortable with all of it, with the number of changes, or just the added changes after the vote that we had in, we actually voted on the charter and approved it as is in July of 2022.
I think one big hiccup is that we didn't date or draft the live document when the changes were made. So I might have a rev that might be outdated.
Well, yeah, Dennis kept, and Larry was, at that time, was managing the draft, and we did talk about that in all of our meetings. He was managing all of the drafts, and I asked to do, and he knows exactly what I want, what I requested, which is, we wanted to have revision 1, revision 2, revision 3.
So where are we with those revisions? Do you know?
Larry was the keeper of all of those records.
I don't,
But you agreed to keep all those drafts. You were doing all the drafts.
I made the
Larry.
changes, I didn't agree to.
Well, all right, so we can go back and forth. So then I think what we need to do, again,
But what, do you,
But
do you know what,
you were-
we're at?
yeah, we're at the latest revision.
What number was that? Do you know?
Off the top of my head, it's probably the 5th or the 6th revision. Because because I actually have emails from Dennis with I got an email in January that this is the latest revision, and everybody got that latest revision. There was no other revision
So I'm
after
looking at these
January.
copies, and how do I know that I have the revision from January? How do I know that?
I can review, what I think would be easier if I just sent you the latest version.
But I printed off the latest version, but what tells me here that that's the latest version?
I guess there's a point of trust here that goes on. No one's changing anything.
I'm not,
I
I'm
don't think it's trust.
I'm not doing that, I'm just,
Any changes?
So I will again send you.
I wish
Okay.
that the document was dated, I guess, can that be done? I think that might be the best way to know that, right,
Absolutely. There's no problem with that. All right, so you were all part of most of the meetings. Not everyone was in all the meetings. And we went through and we voted on so we got to the July 11th meeting, just for historical standing. We got to July 11th. That it was presented, that we approved the bylaw. On July 11th, we also voted to approve the charter as of July 11th, 2022. Because that was the first document. We did the charter first, then we wrapped up the bylaw afterwards. We did that, if you remember, because there weren't, as Larry pointed out, there weren't as many changes in the bylaws. So we're able to get that done. The charter, for all intents and purposes, was done in July. The one thing that we were still discussing was these Board of Health. And we had a meeting with the Board of Health in August of 2022. So on July 11th, in the minutes, and I remember this, we said, we're going to go to the Board of Health and have a discussion with them. And I'm going to point to Vinnie Bardu, the Board of Health. We did meet with you, and we had Larry and Dennis and myself. We had a discussion, and we gave you our thoughts. We said, this is what we're going to do. And then it didn't happen. It just didn't happen. So, there was pros and cons, but we never really picked it up again. We never voted to say that. We never voted again from 3 to 5. And I didn't bring it up again. Mr. Spizzato didn't bring it up again until just the day before the town meeting. It was just something got missed. So if the committee is in favor of changing the charter from 3 to 5, that's an item we have to continue to discuss. And we're happy to discuss it. We're happy to meet with the Board of Health because there are pros and cons to that. So if you look at your July 11th meeting minutes, you'll see that's all recorded. All right.
I just want to add.
Yep.
Because there were still outstanding things from the attorney as well. At that meeting, we still had things to deal with the.
Go ahead, Doug.
In July?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would,
Yeah.
I'd say that makes
There was
sense.
still some things that.
So,
May I?
go ahead, because I'm going to say one more thing.
Because I think there's so much back and forth. Does it make more sense to take what the board is feeling, take what the residents are feeling, and make a punch list of things for us to actually discuss and talk about so that we're not going through, does that
Well,
make sense?
my thinking is, and we haven't heard from Mr. Salisbury. Yes,
Mr.
What I'd like to do is,
thank you.
the people have heard what we want, what we've talked about, so I'm anxious to hear their input as well.
And we'll get there, because I haven't heard from Mr. Salisbury or Mr. Calamati, and they're at the meetings. Do you have anything you'd like to add, Mr. Salisbury?
No, I think that we, as a group, as a board, I think we did a lot of good work over a long time, and I enjoyed our discussions and our brainstorming of the issues as they were presented to us, and there's a lot of good changes that we made in the document that I would like to see and not get lost in this process. But I'm happy to hear if there are concerns or issues that may have been missed or want to be re-examined, I think that's fine, and we can get input from people in the process. I don't think it's sort of productive to go backwards in time and talk about things that really don't really matter to the scope of this board. So if we could, I think Kelly's suggestion is fine. Why don't we make a list of things that we want to address, that the public would want to address? And then we'll schedule a meeting or meetings to talk about those items, and we could just sort of move forward in that direction.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Calamati?
Yes, after hearing what Brian said, I tend to agree with him on those points. And we should be looking forward, not going back. If we made mistakes in the past, I apologize for that. But the problem is now we have to move forward. And like he stated, there was a lot of good work done. And I think we should just move forward. And if people have who have had time to read this now, because it's been posted for about a month, let them send a request or information forward through the board that we can address these issues, or we can go back and look at some of these issues. But for the most part, I thought that what the product that we came up with was good.
Okay, thank you. To the citizens, and I'm gonna ask, if we value your input. And we'd love to hear from what you have to say here to the board, because it's important. We want participation. And if anyone would like to stand up at this time, and we haven't talked about any specific item regarding the charter, but if there's anything you'd like to say, please do. Yep.
Mike Hennessy, 70 Muron Ave. I have two points that I want to make up. It's from Dan Spencer, and I just wanted to vote. I want to put this in the record. It's
Dan Spencer. Dan Spencer.
sorry, not Dan Ranieri. Sorry. It's just the two I just wanted to point out. It's in regards to section 4212 and then section 431, 432. I think they are kind of reiterating the same thing. And I think the 4212 should not even be in the charter, because it's talking about the 10 days. But then with the section 431, 432 with the temporary leave of absence already covers all of that.
I'm a little confused, but that's okay. Because I
So-
did have a conversation with Mr. Ranieri, and he gave me the document.
Yeah.
And I was gonna read that into the
The
minute.
minute.
Okay, yeah, and then I just wanted to voice my concern. I think it's just saying the same thing twice.
What is saying the same thing twice, Mr. Hennessy?
All right, so 431, in the event the temporary absence extends beyond 60 calendar days, the select board at a duly posted public meeting shall follow the Bellingham Charter. Language set forth in section 432, vacancy to continue to fill a temporary absence. And then you got the 432, in the event under section 432A, a temporary absence continues to exist after 180 calendar days, the select board made by a majority vote of the board at a duly posted in public meeting, renew the existing appointee or any other qualified individual by an additional 90 days. And then you got the 4212, with the approval of 4 members of the select board, the town administrator may delegate to others the administrator's powers and duties under this charter, except as may be prohibited by law, and further any actions taken by the designee authorized herein shall be deemed to be the actions of the town administrator. This delegation of power shall not exceed more than 3 calendar days unless reauthorized by a vote of the select board as set forth in this section for an additional 3 calendar days.
So I guess you're reading exactly what Mr. Ranieri wants.
Right.
Moved or added.
But this, I think, needs to be, this section that's in there, the 4312 should be taken out. Because it basically,
No, I'm sorry, Mr. I mean to interrupt you, but I think you're just a little confused. Because they are two different 431 and 432 are different. 4212, I understand Mr. Ranieri, he wants to know why this was added to the charter. So
Right,
I've already sent this along to our town council to provide opinion as to why that's in there.
okay,
Because I agreed with them, all right, and we had a meeting, so that's already been sent off to town council for her review.
It gives a lot of power.
Yeah. Yeah.
well, if just, just say sake of argument, Ms. O'Connell Smith can say, I'm taking time off and appoint, Larry from Dunkin' Donuts down the street as a town administrator. To cover.
She can't, she
No.
does not have that ability as acting,
As
and that's what
acting?
that says.
No,
She
all
does
of
not have that ability at all.
Yeah, only the town administrator has
Okay.
that ability with select board approval. I mean, she doesn't. That's why we added that language in there that, to make sure that we actually removed some of the powers I'll use what we codified what the temporary, town administrator's powers would be,
Okay.
because they're not the same as a town administrator.
Okay,
They're a lot less, and that's what we did. What Dennis, Dennis, what Mr. Ranieri asked us to do is what you just read in 4-3-1.
yeah,
What you did is to keep the 4-3-1 as is, but please add this sentence. So, so and same for 4-3-2. He
Correct.
wants us to add those lines. So what I did, I sent this to town council.
Okay.
And I said, this is what Mr. Ranieri is proposing. Would you please review it and provide us the opinion? Because we always run this by town council, and you need to. So I've already asked them for their opinion.
okay.
So yeah, we're there.
All right, and then part two, I'm just gonna speak in favor of a 5-person board for the Board of Health. As somebody currently sitting on the Board of Health, I think a 5-person board, elected board, would probably serve the community a little bit better than an appointed 5-person board. And that's just my 2 cents.
And thank you, because I've heard that too. I mean, I'm a fan, and I said this, and I talked to this, that I think 3, it's challenging. 5 is probably a good number. The elected part, that's a whole different conversation that's never going to get accomplished by this charter. Okay, review committee, that would be a referendum type thing on the ballot, right? To change something like that. That's not, we're not going to attack that.
Again,
I don't think we should.
I see
We'll
that.
never get anything done if we do that. Honestly,
I just see what, again, I grew up in Milford, and Milford is a fully elected board, and what they
And
accomplished.
this board used to be elected. And in
Okay.
fact, it was elected. The Board of Health was elected.
Okay.
And they changed it to an appointed. And what I heard the history is that the challenge they had was that you could easily elect someone that didn't have the right experience.
Okay.
Or especially in an important role as the Board of Health. It's very important right in this town. So having someone with experience that's vetted by the select board, okay, who is already elected by the town. That's why that changed years ago. That's what I understood. And that's what
I mean, that's a very,
me.
very valid answer.
So that's.
And also, it could be a hybrid.
Right?
It could be a hybrid.
But you could have some elected and some
Yeah.
appointed. But again, I don't,
That,
but my opinion is that's too big of a situation for this board to.
the election will point, but expanding it may be viable.
I would love to see 5 people that just want to be on the board first.
It's hard enough to
I mean,
get
that's
three.
if
Yeah.
we can switch to a 5-member board and you actually have people that want to submit resumes and applications to actually be appointed, that's a huge win in and of itself that we have trouble with as a town. So
Right.
not just in that capacity, but in other boards as well. So
Like, I think, Mr. Martinez has been a very valid, point with the qualifications.
That to me, it's just a tough one without any background. And I know we have plenty of people in this town that are nurses and doctors and scientists, and we know we have them. But they don't volunteer. How do you get them? I mean, would an election bring them out? I don't know. We couldn't even get library trustees to put their names on the ballot. How are we gonna get, that's a tough one. I mean, honestly, that really is tough. So that's just my personal opinion. You can agree or disagree.
No, I agree.
but certainly more things to think about when we have the Board of Health come in to talk about it. So it's great to hear your take on things.
Yeah. So, Ms. Dennis, was there anything else from the citizens? Because, yes,
Yeah, Luke Sosa, Valley View Road.
Mrs. and thank
I
you.
was at the meeting a few weeks back and when this article came up, I couldn't believe the fight to you know, pass it. Okay, but, so I'm here tonight and I've heard somebody over here say significant changes. I still haven't heard anybody tell me what significant change is in this document. I mean, I hear different things like dates and stuff like that. And the Board of Health going up to 2 more members. I hear that, but what was the big fight about? I haven't heard anything about a significant change. Maybe somebody can touch on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think Mr. Sposato clarified what he meant by significant.
Yeah.
There was the volume of changes. And in the last minute addition that was added kind of in an untimely manner. So I'm hearing that. But but to me, I still haven't heard, and I've asked, I still haven't, is there anyone on the board sitting here today where there's something in the charter other than the items we added after we took a vote? Are there any other items that you take exception to? That we
Been
should
3 weeks, I'm
rethink?
sorry.
No, I think that's a
It's
fair
been 3
question.
weeks since, and there's a lot of people that voted. Over, you know,
That's already.
pass over, but I don't see many of them here tonight.
Yeah.
So that's a little suspicious to me. It's weird.
Okay, fair enough. Anybody else? This Hamway?
And Hamway 39 Weathersfield Road. I've heard a lot of stuff going on, and I want to know where each member of this board stands on the qualifications of the town administrator and the residency requirement. I'd like to know what each resident, what each member of this board, where they stand on the education requirement and the residency requirement.
Start.
Hi, Mr. Hamlin. So my opinion and where I stand on this is that the town administrator should have education as well as experience. You wouldn't hire a superintendent of schools without a master's degree to do that job. You wouldn't hire a CFO for this town without a degree in finance. The town administrator's position is to oversee the entire town, including the budget, which is over a $70 million budget. Having the education along with experience goes a long, long way. And if you look at any job postings out there right now for town administrators, they're actually insisting you have a master's degree. We're insisting that it should be at least a bachelor's and also take into consideration that you have that municipal experience because that really matters. Private sector and public sector, very, very different. And the way municipal budgets work are very, very different. So that's important. As far as the residency requirement, I don't feel that you have to have a residency requirement because that limits your qualified pool of people. I am definitely amenable though to saying maybe we limit it to 15 or 20 miles so that whoever becomes the next town administrator is still close in proximity, which is exactly what civil service does. Civil service insists that you have to be, I believe it's 15 miles or you have to move to town. Yes, Mr. Hamway, I saw your finger up.
Just a point that I'm sure many of you may know this. You cannot become the town administrator in Milford without a master's degree.
You can't become the town administrator anywhere without a master's degree if you look at any posting. And there are other towns out there looking for town administrators. And there are over 30 people applying for each of these positions. So there is definitely I don't think you're going to be limited by adding in these things. In fact, you're actually going to get many more qualified individuals who could be amazing. That's just my opinion.
Pastor Barron, I just want to, Mr. Hamway you want to hear from all of us first before Pastor Barron?
Absolutely, that's why we're here.
Mr. Moderator,
Yeah, yes, Joe.
uh, I'll go next on that appointment of qualifications. Should be a minimum of bachelor's degree with experience. And quite frankly, we have a better pool of applicants if we can go beyond the town limits. As far as residency goes, I don't have a problem with somebody traveling a half an hour to get here every day. He knows what the job's going to require. He will probably tend to move closer or into town just as a matter of convenience because of the long hours that the town administrator has to work between day meetings and night meetings. So I am fine with the way that we have structured it. And if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
I think being a resident has a lot of value for any of the positions here in town. I think receiving the services that we provide to our residents as a town administrator you have some vested interest in that. I think having an education and having a degree might weigh you more prominently as a candidate, but I don't think it should be only that. I think some experience and some successful history of past experiences and jobs have just as much, if not more weight than a degree. I know plenty of people who are successful who have not gone on to have a master's or have run successful companies and have done very well for themselves. So I don't think it has to be, I think you should live in town. And I think if you are a holder of a degree, I think you should be considered a little bit differently, but I don't think you should be limited to just having a degree. I think past experience has a little bit more weight as well.
Mr. Chairman,
Uh,
can I ask Mrs. Zell to your question?
Sure.
You're a school committee woman. Would you want the next superintendent to not have any degree?
I think it's a different conversation. I think I didn't say not to have a degree. I did not say not to have a degree. I said, I think it's weighted differently. I think if you have experience in running a successful company, I think that has just as much weight and merit than having a degree.
Mr. Morano was working on a PhD.
He absolutely is.
Okay, that shows you what you need over there.
I'm not gonna talk about that position right now.
I'm just telling you, my opinion
And I
is,
appreciate
my
your.
opinion is you need to, residency out the door, you may as well open it up to more qualified people. A degree, absolutely, maybe even a master's.
Mr. O'Connell?
I think it should be a hybrid of both. I think you should look at experience as well as education. I also think ideally it'd be nice if you could have a resident, but I also see the benefits of expanding it outside the town. But I think this is a long-term discussion that we may not come to an answer this evening.
No, I'm not expecting.
Okay, just to be fair.
No, no, this is, because, and Mrs. Spozzato,
Yeah, I kind of agree. I agree with what everybody said, but I think it's important that we look at the combination and the skill sets that the person brings to the town. In terms of the qualifications, I think that it's equally important that they have municipal experience because they do know more of the ins and outs of things and how to get things done and what's required and so on and so forth. And as far as the education goes, I think it's wonderful if they have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, but it's not specific as to what that degree is in. So, they could have a degree in, I don't know, some kind of modern art or something, which I don't think will really add that much. I think the experience is better than that degree. So again, I would say it's kind of a hybrid as well. As far as the residency goes, right now, we require board and committee members to, at the discretion of the Board of Selectmen, the preference is to have people from town. I think people from town would be the ideal situation. I don't say that it's necessarily going to have to be that way, but that would be, to me, the preference to try and seek out someone that's in town. And I think one of those things is I think we have to do a better job of letting people know what's available. Because even with the recent situation with positions that have been filled, people have come in and said to me, we didn't even know that it was available. So I think that's an important piece of it as well. But I think that the people are, as a resident, would be more invested more supportive of the town and like coming to different events and so on and so forth and more of a presence. So that would be a preference. But I also understand that we might not have anyone here and then it would have to be an answer.
Thank you. Mrs. Salisbury?
So I think I agree with what Larry said with regard to a preference over someone in town versus someone that doesn't live in town and doesn't have a vested interest in the community, or at least can participate in events outside of the working hours. But I do think it would be in today's world of in workplace where people aren't necessarily in an office and they're not, they can do things remotely and things like that. I would be hard pressed to limit the town's ability to attract the best candidates from wherever they are. But I certainly do think that someone in town, if they're qualified and they would be more desirable. But I don't think we should necessarily limit the pool of people, because as it is, originally the charter as it exists now says the person doesn't have to live in town or in the state, but can move within 12 months.
Or it can be waived by the select board at that time.
Or it could be waived by the,
That's
so-
in there now. So there isn't a requirement. So, Mr. Silver, how do you feel about the education and experience? You talked about, you're not finished.
are you talking to me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. So with regard to a minimum qualification, educational qualification, I think it's an interesting question. We discussed this and it was, I believe it was unanimously decided that we'd make some revisions to the charter, not adding a provision or requirement for a college education, because that's already existing. My understanding is that one of the changes that Mr. Ranieri has circulated is whether or not that should be the qualifications for a town administrator should be left to be established by the selectmen. And, and that's conceptually from a sort of a high level theoretical point of view. That's, should you give a politically elected board wide discretion on determining the qualifications of the town administrator without any criteria? And, in many different ways in our society, we don't do that. There's minimum requirements for a lot of positions that you have, if you want to be president, you have to meet these minimum qualifications. If you want to be a judge, if you want to be governor, you have to meet these minimum qualifications. And I think that's to protect against intrigue. So I think with regard to whether or not that would make sense for Bellingham, I'm interested in hearing what Mr. Ranieri's thoughts in that regard, and interested in hearing in what town council has to say and whether, that practice is widely established throughout the state or not. But I'd have to be convinced that removing minimum qualifications and putting in giving the board wide discretion is a good move in terms for the town.
Giving them wide discretion or not giving them wide discretion?
No. So the select board makes the hiring decisions.
Yeah.
So obviously they have wide discretion on who they ultimately hire.
Yeah.
But the qualifications, I think I'm interested in hearing Mr. Ranieri's position on that point and hearing town council's observations of someone that's worked for many different towns, and whether or not that's a practice that's widely accepted.
And that's a good point, because Mr. Salisbury, I have already emailed. Again, I sent all the comments that Mr. Ranieri had sent me, and I asked for her review. And and like Mr. Hennessy, he read some things that Mr. Ranieri would like, and I'll just read what he'd like. In section 4-1-1, and then I'll provide my commentary, not to his section, but how I feel about things. The town administrator shall be appointed by the select board for a 3-year term. The appointee shall be the administrative officer of the town and be responsible to the select board for the administration of town affairs placed in their charge by or under the charter. So that was there. Then the select board that shall determine the hiring process for the town administrative position and shall maintain all powers granted to them by the charter and Mass General Law. And here's the select board shall establish a job description, which is what they would do today, along with the HR, which will include, but not limited to education, training, experience, or any other qualifications. So what that basically says is there are no minimum requirements, is what Mr. Ranieri is saying. He says, but not to include, not be limited to education. So you don't need an education, you don't need training, you don't need experience or any qualifications. The select board, an elected body, they deem necessary to perform the duties of the town administrator. So that's, again, contrary to kind of almost what everybody has said here, it's saying you don't need any minimum requirement. That's not in there, Mr. Hanway. This is a document that Mr. Ranieri has provided many members of the. So I will give my opinion. In my opinion, first is mine and mine alone. I have done a lot of research, and I typically do a lot of research to get a general consensus. I spoke with 5 town administrators. All of the town administrators that I spoke to, and former retired, none of them lived in the town in which they served. They were hired because of their experience and their ability to do the work. The Foxborough town manager lives in Seacon. Now he's since retired, so he drove from Seacon. The Burlington town manager lived up like Topsfield. And so they'll have like within 30-40 minute commutes. And in speaking with town council and just in general business, by limiting where a person lives, by telling them you have to live in the town of Bellingham, then there are benefits to being in the town, of course. But by limiting that person, we really do reduce the pool of qualified applicants. I think I can't say that you could just go out and do a ton of town administrators, and you want a pool of more than 2 or 3. Mrs. Grant pointed out, any town administrator position out there, there's like 30 applicants, and they don't all live in Hopedale's hiring, they don't all live in Hopedale. Right, so I think that's very limiting to the town and what's in the best interest of our town is you don't want to limit. The other piece is when you look at process, I was on the Massachusetts Municipal Association website, and I was looking at various job descriptions in a general sense. And this was before the select board election and all of that. I was doing all of that work beforehand. There isn't one out there that doesn't want a minimum of a bachelor's and 3+ years of public administration leadership position and master's preferred. That's the majority. That is when you go out there and look. I've spoken with in the past because my job is the chair at the former chair. I spoke with a professional recruiting organization to get an idea of what it would take. Unequivocally, they say today most towns minimum requirement is and they like bachelor's degree in business management, public administration, master's degree, 3-5+ years experience, and that's minimum. Like we wouldn't hire a fire chief, an important role in this town, if he didn't have that experience. We wouldn't hire a superintendent if he didn't have the leadership. Why would we change for the town administrator? The town administrator, as Mrs. Grant pointed out, is responsible for the entire town. They are the chief executive officer of this town. This is a $70 million plus budget, right? I can't stress hard enough, and even you have to have someone qualified. There needs to be an educational background, master's degree, because you know how hard they work to get that. I just feel very strongly that those minimum requirements should be and remain in the charter. And I also spoke with town council across the state. Their minimum requirements are a minimum of a bachelor's degree, and most of it's business management or public administration. And when you read other charters, which I've done, they all say that. They all say business management or public administration experience with a minimum degree. So it's not like I just feel this way. I literally read a lot of charters.
Can I ask a
And-
question?
Yeah,
What did Dennis have? Did Dennis have a degree in?
Yeah.
public
Yes, he
Yeah,
does,
yeah,
and he has
yeah.
a master's.
Master's
yeah,
degree?
Yep.
yeah, he did.
They're hanging in his office.
Like other certifications as far as, because in order for him to do the procurement, you have to have procurement certification, there's a number of these things. But he had all of those.
Did he have the master's when he was appointed the town administrator, or did he get that on his
He got
tenure
that, he got that, he had a bachelor's degree in public administration from UMass Amherst.
when he started?
Yeah, 30 years ago, 30 plus years ago, so he did have that. And then he gained his master's and all the certifications over time. But when Dennis was hired 30 years ago, he was hired as an executive secretary. We didn't even have at that time, 30 years ago, we didn't have a town administrator position. That was actually added, later on. They named him the TA. Yes, sir.
We've been spoiled for 30 years.
We have
Yeah, I'll be very honest.
big shoes,
Yeah, we've been very spoiled.
big shoes.
Yeah, this is a run. Longer than the Patriots said. We've been very lucky.
So what's interesting, in speaking with a number of the town administrators that I went out after myself, they all know Dennis, and they all said, huge, great loss. He's well loved in that community of people. Big loss, big shoes. I think the town recognizes that. Pastor Barron's had his hand up for a long time, so I'm gonna go to him first, Mr. Hamway, okay? Sorry, he hasn't spoken yet, but he did.
It's fine.
Sure, in all respects, she hasn't given her opinion.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. And for those who don't know, I'm Beth Cornell Smith. And I'm Human Resources Director. I'm filling in right now for Mr. Frayne. And he and I have worked together for a long time and very closely. And I know that he was adamant that someone taking this position, which is a business, needs to have the education behind them. They need to have that experience with a municipal position. I came from private industry to public. Different animal completely, completely different. I came from banking to here. And it was enlightening. And I know that Mr. Frayne loves this town more than anything. He wants what's best for this town. He stated that the education is so important. The fact that we've had, is it Suffolk College? that he has?
Suffolk has the degree,
Yeah.
the certificate
University.
for Framingham, yes.
So you
Framingham
can,
State as well.
you send someone who you think is going to work their way up to town administrator. There's a year-long class, covers all different things. It covers finance, it covers planning, it covers building. And he has sent a couple people from our town that he thinks has capabilities. That's to train them and teach them the municipal side, because it's so different. And again, I'm sorry, but this is passionate to me because he loves this town. And he would not say that if he did not feel that with all his heart. The experience of, you do need the years. He can't come out and just start a $70 million company. But you need that education, you need that polish of going through school also, because you're representing town of Bellingham. So that's my opinion.
I apologize.
That's okay.
Recognizing you. Did you have anything else, Pastor Barron?
Baron Rogers, 1172 South Main Street. I just wanted to say, you concurred with everything I was just gonna say. Doing my research as far as the town administrators in the area, my feeling, it would be having the bachelor's in business, but most of all, putting a minimum of even bringing up to a master's. As far as travel, as a correction officer, I traveled from Mattapoisett, Massachusetts to Concord, Massachusetts. 192 miles a day, round trip a day. Now, that was just in my capacity as in corrections. I believe being a town administrator, I believe limiting our pool is if we have some kind of distance that, you know, keeping them in line. So I do concur with what Mr. Martinez said.
Mr. Hamway?
I just want to say that with the pastor here, I think all of us, whether we're Christians or not, are praying for Dennis Frame's total recovery and a return to this position.
Ain't gonna happen.
Thank you.
We're not saying anything, we're saying, yeah, I think everyone does. We all want Dennis back.
And,
Yeah,
and
we
he
all want him
also,
back and we'd like to have him back healthy as a horse.
You bet.
and he does appreciate all the thoughts, because I pass them along to him and let him know that we're all thinking of him whenever I talk to him.
The pastor will tell you that he's been on our prayer list for the last 2 months at First Baptist Church.
He must be working.
Also, I have one final statement on this issue.
Okay.
There are 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts. If we were to have a successor to Dennis without a degree, we would be the laughing stock of 350 cities and towns. Take it for what it's worth.
Thank you, Mr. Hamway. And part of my research, I did find out that there is one community in Massachusetts where there is someone that doesn't have a bachelor's degree, because I asked that question too. There's one, but that person had 15 years of experience in public administration prior to getting that job, and he's doing a wonderful job, but he had 15 years of public administration experience.
So that means,
That's a big difference.
so that means, if I hit my
Only
calculator,
one town.
1 over 351, that percentage is pretty darn low.
And who knows, I mean, and that's what I learned, it could be off, but the point is, it's very rare. And I've asked town council for opinion as well, as Alfred suggested, we've asked town council for opinion, what are they seeing across Massachusetts? And I did read a job posting for Charlestown, Rhode Island, yesterday, and their requirement was a bachelor's degree, 3+, and a master's degree preferred. It doesn't mean you have to have it, but that's minimum with a bachelor's in public administration or management.
And I would also just like to say, I appreciate everybody on this committee, 9 members, 2 years you worked on this. And it seems like at town meeting, I couldn't understand when I asked you about, you know, the changes, and, you know, dotting the i's and crossing t's and some other things. And it's just like 2 years. That's a long time.
And I appreciate that, but you know what, after the next day, because I was up there representing, and I didn't represent all the board, I reflected, and you know what, I agree with Mrs. Altamonte and Mr. O'Connell, that we didn't have time, it wasn't an intentional move, but it wasn't a big change, so I thought we'd be okay. It wasn't okay. The town spoke, they spoke, that's why we're here. I'm okay with all of that. Yes, it was ugly.
Yes, it was.
And it's, you know, that's the stain on the town of Bellingham, that town meeting. However, and I'm part of it, and I want to forget about it. And like, what we need to move forward. So
I
if
don't-
there's no other opinions from Mr. Hennessy.
I just have one quick question,
Yeah.
just honestly, just pure curiosity. We had a diamond in the rough. I respected Mr. Frame a great deal. And I know a little bit about his background coming out of the Air Force and settling here. When he came out of the Air Force and took this position, did he have a degree or did he get it? while
We
he was
just got, he
working?
had
He had his
bachelor's.
bachelor's
He
degree.
did? Okay,
From UMass Amherst, a bachelor's in public administration.
Okay.
And just so you know, for the record, Dennis first lived in Boston when he was interviewing, and then he moved to Uxbridge. And he lived in Uxbridge when he was here. And then over time, he decided to move his family to Bellingham. He didn't live in Bellingham. He lived in Boston when he was hired. And then they moved to Uxbridge. And from Uxbridge, he then moved his family to Bellingham.
I just knew he got out of the service and.
And that was his choice.
All for an executive session.
Well, it's what he wanted to become, that's what he wanted to do. Yes,
And
Mr.
Yeah, sorry.
Mr. Hall.
I was gonna.
I know it was, but you.
Brian Hall, 34 High Street. So, I agree with everything that you've stated and several you've stated about, the requirement of having that degree. I think it should be a master's degree, quite honestly. It seems to be that you're a CEO of a $70 million business. And, I find it curious that we're even talking about this right now. It seems absurd to me. It seems absurd. It's been there for how many years, that requirement? And then now all of a sudden, it's being questioned. It just seems, the timing of it seems funny, and it seems absurd to me. To lower the bar, to weaken. I want a leader in that position. I don't want someone who projects weakness. Now, not to say that, and I agree with you, there's lots of successful people that don't have business degrees, but this is a position that requires a leader. I don't want the bar lowered. I don't think any of the citizens would stand for that. We don't do it for the chief of police. We don't do it for the superintendent. Fire guy, you probably have a degree, I'm sure. There happens to be on the town website now, an open position for, I think it's an assistant accounting position.
Yep.
Requires a degree. So to sit here and suggest that maybe the CEO of the town, maybe we can waive that. It's just weak. It's sad. You talk about.
Mr. Hennessy had his hand up first, Pastor.
No, Pastor, I was.
Okay, I apologize. Pastor Barron, go ahead. I thought I saw you raise your hand.
Baron Rogers, 1172 South Main Street. I just want to know if this committee, from this point forward, will start documenting all the changes. As it seems, when I was listening, it seemed like it was a confusion on what was the last one that was changed.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. I think that the process is established. We're going to start from the last red line version, which was updated by town council. We're going to date that version, which was 5/10/23. And then that'll be distributed. Because that was the last meeting we had. There were no changes after that. That'll be distributed to the town, and we'll ask to be posted to the town website. So anyone who wants to have access to it, they see that. They're also going to ask the town council to kind of change the way they do their red line. They should strike through it, or they should just add to it. So there's ways to color it, striking through red. Just leave it the way it is. If we're going to add something, we just add it. We don't need to strike it, and then add a whole new section with the same number.
Thank
It should be that number. That's how it should be done. And I agree. That would be less confusing. We'll do it that way. Thank you.
I just wanted to make a point, to the public and.
Yep.
And to yourself. Or remind the committee that when we first started this endeavor, we started with the charter, went to the bylaws, and then we came back to the charter. During that time period, Mr. Comfer, who was the, planning, well, he actually still is, correct? The town planner. So, the right name anyway. He was here and he was the one that was the keeper of the document. And what subsequently happened was kind of a series of events, but what happened was it went from his version, and it was done on a version, I don't know what he was using, was it Google Docs or something? And then it went to the town attorneys, town council, and they added remarks onto it, and it was done in a different version, so it was kind of an issue with that as well. And so that's part of that issue.
So moving forward, we're going to use Microsoft Word. We're going to use track changes. With that,
It's easier.
well, it's,
No
yeah,
longer.
if you don't used to Google Docs, Word is a lot easier, and track changes. The nice thing about track changes is any change can be audited, and you can get a report on everything that's been done in the document. It's just been done in Word. It was done in Google and then moves over, unless you have a software program to convert all those changes, you can't do it. I live in that world. We deal with legal documents all the time. So Word doc is is a better way to do it, and that's how we'll handle it.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I could be mistaken.
Mhm.
I thought you sent us a document indicating that, you, Kelly, Brian met with town council after the, town meeting. And just,
No,
You know, I did.
okay,
So no, before town meeting,
okay. I thought,
before,
I'm sorry,
I've
I
got
don't-
something else as well.
what?
I did too.
maybe, so,
Yeah, I thought I saw.
I don't have the unit.
yep,
hang on. I
Yeah,
can
yeah,
pull it up and
what
actually
changes you
read
made
it.
from that?
there were no we didn't change anything after town meeting at
Okay,
all, nothing was changed.
okay. I just thought there was a meeting after town.
No, we have not met or even spoken with town council.
I have spoken, I've emailed her, and I did, because I was asking her the questions I talked about, and I did send her an email with the changes that Mr. Ranieri had proposed and asked for her opinions. And I'm gonna ask her to join our next meeting,
Okay,
okay?
that's fine.
Yeah,
Excuse me, Don.
yeah,
Can I just make a suggestion perhaps for everyone to
Yeah.
consider? Is why don't we, just so everyone's comfortable with our starting point, why don't, like our next meeting, whatever that may be, why don't we go through the version that, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page with the version as a starting point? And
Mhm.
then with regard to the issues, any issues raised by anyone, that we, because I think a lot of the issues will require a lot of discussion and a lot of investigation. And it may make sense to break up the issues to multiple meetings. And then we vote at the end of all this on all of the changes. But a lot of the technical stuff, like, for example, the college education piece, and when we talk about that, it would be very helpful to have town council present, but for some other changes, those are just not so complicated, I guess. So to have identified meetings in which town council is going to be present and what topics will be discussed, I think it'll be helpful for the public
Mhm.
and for us to prepare. Just as a-
I think that's fair, so I will get the latest version to everybody.
Me.
Go ahead, Mrs. Grant.
I just wanted to go back quickly because this has Kelly, Dawn, Beth have talked to town council, so I would actually like to read that paragraph in that email that was stated in its entirety, which stated, due to Dennis's unexpected leave of absence and some uncertainty in the charter, Kelly, Beth, and I had several conversations with town council. We were chair and vice chair of the select board at that time. So that is why we have discussions with town councils, as is our right in those positions. Conversations with town council to get direction on how to proceed on a number of matters. This is for select board. In the current charter, there is no language that explicitly allows select board to appoint an interim town administrator. In the recent case, town council deferred to MGL, which states the select board is the appointing authority. For the avoidance of doubt, it is recommended by town council that we modify the language. The modified language was created by town council. Please review Article 4, Section 3, Article 4, Section 3.1, Article 4, Section 3.3, duties and powers. Again, this is modified language that was added for the avoidance of doubt about which body has the power to appoint personnel. So that was what I think some people were misinterpreting the email as we were meeting
No, not
with
that.
people, but I just wanted that to be
I thought
read
I
into
saw,
the record so that it
I don't have a problem with
is
it.
aware.
I thought I read an email that you met with town council after town meeting.
No,
Okay, then I'm mistaken.
But I have had conversation, right, and I've had email
Okay.
exchange. Is there anything else from?
I just have a question. So Mr. Ranieri submitted whatever he submitted. And it seems the cat's out of the bag about this the education requirement. What else did he request, number one, and number two, how would, say myself, go about submitting the requirement that you have a master's degree for this?
So he's not requesting these things to be put into the charter. He was requesting that we consider his opinion because he couldn't be here.
Okay.
So that's when they say asking to have it, he's not on the committee, so he does not have that right to insist that things be put in. He does have the right as a citizen to ask that his opinions be heard the way that everyone else's opinions are heard.
How do I request that a master's degree be added to the requirement?
I have that already in the minutes.
But you can also send an email
Mhm.
requesting
Okay.
that. So you.
I mean, it seems so obvious to me.
Yeah.
I don't know why. it's-
So I'll answer your question. So Mr. Hennessy had already raised three items. One was section 431, and I explained what that was. The other item that he wants us to consider, there were two. We talked about one, which is and Mr. Hennessy raised this about changing the Board of Health from a 3-member to 5-member, but Mr. Reiner also added, not to put words in your mouth, sir, he'd like to see a change to an elected position. Board of Health.
Yeah. So that was just my opinion. I didn't.
Well, no, but I thought that was you were saying.
That's my
That's your opinion. I apologize.
No, that's fine.
But that was his opinion as well. The other thing that he wanted to suggest was the change of the makeup of the Charter Review and Bylaw Committee. What he's suggesting is, and I'll summarize, that we go from that the board goes from 9 members to 11. And that each of the boards would have 1 member. So today, there is a member from school committee, planning, select board, but there's 2 from finance. What he's saying is there's no reason for 2 from finance. He's saying, get your 6 or your 7, I'm just summarizing, and then 4 at large, appointed by the town moderator. So it would go from 9 to 11. And, that's his opinion. My opinion is 7 might be too many, but I do think that 1 or 9 are too many. Maybe we ought to reduce it to 2. But we should still have at least 1 member from the select board. And what he suggested to be clear, is that the members at large couldn't be from an elected board. So for example, at the time of this 2+ years ago, Mrs. Grant was the select board member, and I was appointed by the moderator as at large. So even though I'm the select board, but I was elected. So what Mr. Ranieri is saying, that shouldn't happen. There should be just 4 people that aren't elected at large. Well, that's just what he suggested, and I told him we would take that under advisement. So that was the other piece. So glad you brought that up, because I didn't want to forget. And that's it. And that's his opinion. And again, we're going to have those put into minutes. They were already sent. And you have Mr. Bissonette's email and Ms. Garton's email. So Mrs. Garton sent an email. She wanted read into the minutes, and so did Bill Bissonette. Mr. Bissonette was at the town meeting. He spoke at the end and basically was in agreement that let's wait until, give it more time. So if you guys sent it to Kelly as the secretary to put into the minutes, but
So,
You can
the
read it.
meeting the email that Mrs. Garton sent, reads, "Hi Don, I'm unable to make the meeting tomorrow. There are a couple of things that I would like to be added to the minutes. I believe that the residency requirement should be waived. I also want to keep the requirement of a bachelor's degree for a new town administrator. I believe that any candidate who had experience in public management as well. Also, I would like to talk about the added language in more depth at a future meeting, which we had all already discussed. The other piece that Mr. Bissonette asked to be read into the minutes. Sorry, it's at the bottom of a,
sorry, long email.
yeah. I have it, yeah.
I can find it. I have it. I have it. right here.
All right, you can read
All
it.
right, it says, hi, Don. This was dated June 13th from Bill Bissonnette. Hi, Don. I will still be out of town on the 14th. I would like you to read this email into the minutes of the meeting of the Charter Review Committee. I agree with the Charter Review Committee that Article 4-1-2 appointment would be removed requirement for TA to reside in Bellingham. So it's saying there's no residency requirement. Let me share some history with your committee on the position of town administrator. Before we had a charter, we had an executive secretary position. Our first one worked for a short time and left to work in Westwood. I was on the select board and we reviewed many resumes to fill the position. Dennis Frame came to the top. He lived in Boston after his discharge from the Air Force. The rest is history. Well, I already shared the history. The select board needs to have a broad view to appoint the town administrator. Regards Bill Bissonnette. So basically saying what many of you are saying out there, a broader view, minimum requirements, don't need to live in town. So anything, yes?
Yeah, just take this for what it's
Yeah.
worth. You're talking about the number of data committee members, whether 9 is okay, or
Yeah, we have 9 now, yeah.
in Rentham, they operate with 5 members.
I mean, yes, sir.
Well, I just, Mike Peavy, Weathersfield Road, I'm gonna ask a question, but I don't really expect anybody to answer it. And I'd like to know what's really going on here. I mean, obviously, there's a long game, there's the discussion that we've had tonight, nothing really warrants all the to-do about at the town meeting and everything else. There's either people who are not in this room pulling strings, or there's an agenda that we don't know anything about. And the word that was used in the beginning of the meeting, trust. I don't see it. I don't see it on this side of the table, on that side of the table. And I really don't see it from the townspeople to the committee. I need to think that you guys should be working together. And there's nothing here, whether it got a resident or a bachelor's degree is worth all the to do about this. I came to try to see what's going on because my spidey senses activated, because it just doesn't just make sense to me. That's all. I don't expect an answer, but I'll be watching to see what the long game is. Some people.
I'd like to address that. I don't know how we decided to sit where we sat tonight. I walked in and sat here. When I was asked the question of why I changed my opinion.
Yeah.
I brought it up at the May 10th meeting, and I brought it up again this evening. I felt like the language for the temporary town administrator was given us too quickly. I also felt that the town should have had an opportunity to look at all the changes prior to them.
Hey, I agree with that,
That is where I'm coming from.
but you seemed offended that people wanted to know why you changed your vote. And I think that's something people are entitled to know. I mean, you went on public record.
I justified that twice.
No, I'm not asking you to justify it. They were just asking you, you went on public record and said, this is ready to go.
Correct.
But then you spoke at the town meeting or whatever, however it came about that you changed your mind. People were entitled to know that.
As I said, I was not comfortable in hindsight with that language.
I know that
And I
now.
think we should have had more public input
I agree.
prior to the town meeting.
I agree. My question was really about the overall process and where we're going and what different people want. I'm just saying that, how long has this committee been?
2 years. So
Yeah. So,
I'm not gonna, what I'm gonna say is, it was interesting when this all started 2+ years ago. First, we were like master plan, then we moved into this position here. I remember Dennis very distinctly saying, this isn't gonna take all that long, there's not a lot of changes to be made, it's a pretty solid charter. We've had it around, fast forward, I had asked Mr. Connors, who's here tonight, the chair of the select board, who was the chair of the last committee, how many meetings did you have? About 6. I can say, and Dennis, I can say this committee tore the charter apart. And Dennis would scratch it. I can't believe you got that you're going after so much. There was a lot of very lively, very good, productive, as was said earlier, a lot of work by this committee went into getting it where it was. So I can't speak to what changed. I respect what they're saying here as far as it wasn't ready. But now we have, when you look at Mr. Ranieri's changes, and I'm not picking on Mr. Ranieri, there was some significant changes that could impact the town long-term, especially the education, which is why we spent so much time talking about it. And Mr. Hamway asked what our opinion was, so we answered it. I think we all know what most of the opinions are tonight. And hopefully the committee has heard enough from the town that we can now move forward and say, let's make sure we have a bachelor's. Let's make sure we have minimum of education and experience. That should be a minimum to have an interview or be considered.
Yeah, but just listening tonight, the committee hasn't reached a consensus about the bachelor's degree or the residency. I hear different people say different things.
So that's what we'll have to take up in another meeting, and those will be things that each committee member will have to have discussions, and each committee member will have to vote again on those.
Well, I'm curious as to what changed too. And the reason why I say that is because in July of 2022, where that was in there, we all agreed unanimously to support that.
It's been in there for years.
So I don't know, so something's changed. We'll figure, it doesn't matter what's the cause. It's what we end up with as a result. And the result, I think you loud and clear as to what's important to the town for our next leader here in Bellingham. Yes.
Maureen Connor, 13 Millstone Drive. I want to add something that Larry had indicated. He said something about, it could be an arts degree. Can we add the term relevant degree? So that way we have somebody who has the business knowledge, a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration or a master's in business administration, or something that is relevant as far as a degree. So public planner, I don't know what the.
So Mrs. Connor, to answer your question, so if you look at the job postings, typically the best place to renew them is the MMA.org website, which is a municipal website, and they actually post all municipal job openings. If you look at the description for any town administrator or assistant town administrator, town manager, assistant town manager, it will specifically state bachelor's degree in public administration or related fields, master's preferred in public administration.
Okay.
So that's very, and that obviously, like to Mr. Spadaro's point, we wouldn't look at someone who didn't have the relevant education experience, because that would be just as undermining as hiring someone who didn't have any experience at all.
You'd be irresponsible.
John,
Yes.
may I
Mr.
just
Sullivan.
add one point? Yeah, just to pick up on the prior gentleman's question. So what I hope people know is that, we're all volunteers on this board. Nobody gets paid to do this. And we're taking our time away from family and other obligations, and we're tasked with some very heavy, serious questions, and to think long and hard about, what we think is best for the town. So it's not an easy job, and everyone works full-time or has obligations. And I know everyone on this board, and I know them all to be good, honest, hardworking people. And they, people may disagree on things, but I think that, I know I speak for myself, is that I'm trying to keep an open mind to people's positions and the points that they raise. Anew, I will consider and evaluate, and I know that everyone on the board will do the same. So I want to, I don't want there to be any suspicion of at least my intentions, but I know I speak for many of you, or if not all of you, that we're trying to do the right thing, right? We're trying to do what we were tasked to do. And and we welcome people's inputs, and we will consider all anyone's suggestions, because we don't have all the answers, and we don't have a crystal ball. So I just wanted to make that point.
All right, are there any other? Yes, sir.
And just one observation to the gentleman who asked the question as to how we got here tonight. I think simply that town council recognized that there was a flaw in the charter as a result of Mr. Frain's absence. And that created some urgency and created a gray area. I think probably 80 to 100 people voted to get to tonight. Yet only 15 people showed up. That being the case, the hurdle is just the gray area of Mr. Frain's situation, which is where we're at. Beyond that, having chaired the last committee and doing it in, as you say, 6 meetings, I would urge this committee to bang this out in 2 meetings, because there's only 3 to 5 issues to hammer out. You've done an exceptional job to this point, gender neutralizing the language and the other areas that got worked out. I mean, it seems to me that we have housing authority, the town administrator, and language over assistant.
In the housing authority, language was changed because of Mass General Law. So the only reason that changed, and in the document that was provided at the town meeting, on the right-hand column were explanations from town council as to why the changes were made. So the document was there, the red lines were there. Yeah, I agree. If you're not used to reading red lines, it's a puzzle that you don't have a picture, right? But that's why I asked town council to make sure they put comments on the right-hand side explaining the reason for the change, which was done. So, and I agree. We'd already approved the charter in July to present. And then we added that language with the help of town council because of the situation. If the situation with Dennis had never happened, we wouldn't be here. This would be done.
But if I get one more thing too, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
So KP Law is our town council, and they're town council to dozens, if not scores, of municipalities.
Yeah.
And the language that they're asking to put into the document is not unique to Bellingham. It's unique, it's broad-based to everyone. So when every charter comes up, they're cutting and pasting language based on what they see. Thank you.
Yeah, please.
I just wanted to, I was actually on that committee 10 years ago as well.
Yeah.
So, the difference this time is that we were doing both laws, charter reviewing at the same time.
Yeah.
So therefore, that's why the span of time is so much longer. So my point is, we didn't spend 2 years working on just the charter either. So, you know, they seem like a longer time, but we were doing both.
Larry, in fairness, we did start working on the charter until after that July 11, 2022 meeting. We got through the bylaws pretty quick. And so I'd say 70, 80% of the meetings were on the charter.
But I'm just saying,
But no, it wasn't all the charter. I mean, you could said that, but you know, the large majority was on the charter and a lot of time was spent. Yes.
Just real quick, when are the minutes for this meeting going to be available online?
Well, I will have them.
No pressure, right?
No, but I will have them ready tomorrow and send them out, but the committee needs to review them and then they need to be voted on at the next meeting before they can be released
In the next
to
meeting?
the public.
Well, that's.
We have to
Okay.
settle on it right now.
I just think, the only reason I'm asking is I think a lot of things were discussed and opened up today that is relevant to everyone in town, and I think everyone in town, if they know that they can view these minutes, they should view them.
And you can view the minutes for any
Right.
single
No, I
committee
know.
or board.
But this was it seems to be,
They're all there and they're archived. as
right,
well.
yep, I know. Thanks.
All right. Okay, Mr. Hamway.
That's point. I just want to publicly thank Beth Cornell Smith for taking on 2 difficult roles. We love you, Beth.
I second that.
I concur for sure because.
Thank you, much appreciated.
Not fun driving by here on a Sunday and I see Beth's car in the parking lot.
Exactly.
I have a bunk now.
Well, great, thank you. Anyway, I appreciate that. So is there any other comments? Because what I'd like to do next is I'd like to look at our calendar. So the reason why we chose a Wednesday, it was working with Hillary, the select board. This room is available Wednesday night, and we wanted to have a room. And that's why it's the best night, because select board meets on Mondays, and this happened to be a really good night. So we'd like to continue the meetings on Wednesday evening. This was the second Wednesday. You know, if you go to the first, I don't know if we have enough, if we want to schedule another meeting in this month. Will we have time? If we want to, we can. That would be
The 28th.
the 28th, no. So I would say going into July 12th or July 19th.
What if we did the, you want to do 2 a month, what if we did the 5th and the 9th?
The reason why I put 2 a month, is I just want to make sure that everyone, we're transparent,
Can
we're
I,
out there.
can I make a
Yeah.
suggestion though? I think I've made it to every meeting and I will figure out how to make it work. However, I think the summer is a very hard time to ask people to do 2 meetings a month, but if the committee would like to have that, that
That's
is
fair.
perfectly fine and we will all make it work. But I'm,
I agree.
I think we only meet once a month in August.
So,
we only meet
Sure.
once a month in for July and August as the select board as well.
So that
because of
makes
that.
sense.
so my thought was, and I'm just being fair, Mr. Ranieri's not here tonight. He has a lot to say. I want to be fair. He said I asked him, Wednesdays were good. Second Wednesdays of the month is not good. So I'm looking at July 19th. Now, we don't have to consider Mr. Ranieri. I'm throwing it out there. So it would either be the 19th. I don't think we should go much further out than the 19th. I really don't. July, and I'm gonna say no to the week of July 4th. That's just too many
Okay, that's
people. Too many people.
I'm just trying to go with what you want.
You know what I mean? The reason I had 2 meetings, I wanted to say, listen, we're serious, let's do this. And I want everyone to know, but I had Sue and Joe and Kelly, they said, no, we don't need 2 meetings a month this summer. So I wasn't expecting that. I was just throwing it out there.
My personal opinion, I'd rather do one longer meeting than do,
So the 19th,
but that's just me.
Would anyone object to 7 o'clock? I'm
I'm okay. The only reason I said, I emailed everybody, give me a time. I got 3 people responded to me with times, 6 o'clock. So I said 6 o'clock. I mean, I'm going, you know, I gave you every opportunity to let me know 7's better.
I can deal with.
I mean,
I'm just saying, that was a suggestion. If 7's better, I don't care.
I think the 19th might be a little too long.
So the
So
12th?
I would rather do the 12th
The
because
12th.
I think we're getting too far away from.
Listen, I just threw it out there. It can be the 12th. So the 12th, Mr. O'Connell, you want 7 o'clock?
No,
I can do 7 if 7 works better.
I can do
It's 7's fine for me.
I looked at Mrs. Everyone.
I'll make it work.
I want to get used to the nothing.
So. Mr. Salisbury, Mr. Calavani, can you make the 12th at 6 p.m.?
I'm anytime after 6, I'm fine. 6, 7, I don't care. Both those times are good for me.
All right.
Don, I guess, Don, I have a question for you then. And I don't know what the trajectory of the meetings will be or the topics, but so a number of the changes are, the proponents of those changes are Mr. Ranieri. If he's not available on the 12th, are we going to cover other things or what are we going to do?
Well, I don't think and this is my opinion. If other people have different opinions, that's completely fine. I do not think an entire committee needs to redo a meeting schedule based on one person. If they really want to be there, then they will figure out how to get here.
Those weren't changes, I said they were just suggestions.
And they were suggestions, so I mean, we can easily take them under consideration. He's sent in his, what he wanted to say. But everyone else made the effort to get here, and if it's really important, then people will make the effort to get here.
Okay. fine. So all 12?
We have plenty of things to talk about clearly that aren't, and some of them are the changes that the suggestions that he brought up. There's plenty for this board to talk about.
Just so my actions next, is that I'm gonna reach out to our town council and ask them to be here, ask her or someone from town council to be here on the 12th. Right? And, or either here in person or via Zoom. I'm gonna ask preferably to be here in person. I think it's more effective if Lauren or Joe Fair or anybody can be here, on the 12th. And then I will ask for her opinion on the items that have been sent to her. And we will be working from the last draft. So everyone will get a copy of the last draft. Okay, the last red line. I'll use that word.
Can we, may I make a suggestion? Could we ask that town council send to you ahead of time her opinion so that the committee can have those before we come into the meeting?
On stuff from Bill Bissonette. Aaron knows, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
I just think if we have if we're asking town council for opinions and we need to understand them and hear them, then maybe if we get those ahead of time, then it will.
I think that's great.
I'll send her an email tomorrow. Ask her to be on the 12th and if she can provide an opinion back to us, giving us at least 48 hours. Because it is a holiday and a whole vacation, giving us at least 48 hours opportunity for the committee to review her opinion. We should be able to review her opinion in 2 days.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if we're at that point, but would you want to have the Board of Health come in at that point, at that time or another? I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah, I think it's.
I think we're a little bit away from that right now.
Yeah.
That may be fine in August. I think we have some language we may want to clean up before that. Yeah.
Well, you know what, before we close,
And we have the minutes. We have to review.
so, yes,
Just for clarity, if we are looking at a November town meeting and it seems to be the desire that people have at least 30 days notice. Backing off that time, we get to October. That would have presumed that this committee would finalize their decisions in September. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, by the end of September,
my thinking
so.
was if we can get, like you said, in a couple of meetings, we could even get it done in August. I mean, I'd love to shoot for August. Ideally, we'd love to get it done by August. You know, when that's the goal. So the next meeting, so I think it's unfair to bring in Board of Health in the 12th. You know, again, I think to get your opinion, Vinnie, in the Board of Health's opinion from 3 to 5. And
I'll have Laura post.
what's that?
I'll have Laura post.
Yeah, because you guys will
Have to
be,
be here, be more than.
and
quorum.
Trish is not here, but does that work with the 2 members of the Board of Health who are here to come back on the, talk about that? Okay.
We'll have to get her opinion. I'm thinking.
I think Trisha would be fine too, but yeah, as long as Laura posts it, then
Yeah. you will.
all 3 of you guys can be here and discuss it.
Mr. Martinez, I don't want to presume to tell you what should be in your minutes, but where people will be reviewing these and knowing the schedule. I think it's beneficial to say what your time frame is so that if people do miss meetings, it is documented that the cycle to get to town meeting is detailed.
I think it's ideal. My goal is to have this wrapped up in August. I really think we should try to get it done in August and then use September to tighten it up, put our presentation together and just relax before town meeting, seriously. I mean, everyone here put in an awful lot of time, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, fair amount of anxiety at times. So I think it'd be nice to give everybody a break. Yes, ma'am.
Just one question.
Your name, please?
Susan LaRiviere, 10 Lemire Court, Bellingham, lived in Bellingham all my life. So
Yes, she
far,
has.
so good. The information that was here tonight, will that be posted for all of us
Yes.
so that we can see their revisions in? Okay.
Yeah, that's the plan to put a clean copy, no revisions, and a copy with revisions. So I thought, and then the revisions at the current. And then also, if you go out to the Bellingham Court, you can actually see the current charter, the one that's in force. You can read that current charter. It's all online and the bylaw. It's all there.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Is there anything else? No, I want to thank all of you for coming this evening. I really appreciate your opinion. I hope you'll come to the next meeting as well, which is scheduled for Wednesday, July 12th at 6 p.m. in the Arcan meeting room. We'll make sure we get it reserved. It'll be Zoom and we'll also be live on Cable 8, as this was tonight on Cable 8. And you're really interested after it's done, I think you can even watch the recording if you're so interested. Really good stuff. Pardon me? I want to call for motion to close the meeting at 7:55 on Wednesday, the 14th. I vote.
Second.
We have the second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.